Welcome back to Portfolio, everyone. This week has been one of the busiest weeks of 2020, and tomorrow, 4 of the largest companies in the world are all reporting earnings on the same day. Tomorrow, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook are all reporting their last quarter's earnings. So it'll be a very volatile day in the stock market. These are some of the largest companies in the world, and their price movements have big impact to the overall S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. So Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook all post results tomorrow, and of course that is huge news because these are the market leaders in the tech sector. It'll be very interesting to see how they performed compared to analyst estimates. So in this video, we're going to break down each individual company, talk about how their share price has performed over the last quarter, and take a look at what analysts are expecting for the company. We're going to determine if we believe they can actually beat these expectations, and if we believe that these expectations were solid. We're also going to take a look at to compare what analysts are expecting versus how these companies actually performed during the same quarter last year. So these 4 big tech companies, of course, are called to actually run the market. People believe these companies sway the overall market performance because they make up over 15% of the total S&P 500's value. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with these big tech stocks, and tomorrow's going to be a huge day in the market. Before we jump into the big earnings news and expectations, everyone, I'm the Gen Z investor, and every single day on this channel, I post new videos about the stock market, any different stocks you can buy for your portfolio, overall stock market performance, and any other big stock market news and headlines. So please like and subscribe, and we're going to get right into this crazy week of earnings and all the expectations for tomorrow. So this week, we've already seen a bunch of big name companies report earnings. We saw Starbucks have a beat in revenue. We saw eBay actually beat on both earnings and revenue in Q2. And we saw Visa beat estimates, but they still saw quarterly profits fall 23%. A bunch of other big names reported, but we're not going to go through each individual company. This video is going to focus exactly on the 4 big tech stocks that report tomorrow, which is going to be a huge day for the market. So the first one we're going to go through is Apple, currently trading at around $370 a share. You can see here on the 1-year price chart, they're up a huge 82.5%. So they saw March lows, have fully recovered, and are reaching new all-time highs. And on the 52-week range, they are trading very close to that all-time high. They are sporting a $1.64 trillion market cap, making this one of the most valuable companies in the world. So Apple, of course, saw their stores close during this last quarter. There is an economic shutdown where people may not be spending a lot of money on luxury products or more high-end products such as iPhones, AirPods, or Apple Watches. So it'll be very interesting to see how Apple performs during this quarter. Of course, they've done a great job of diversifying their revenue and introducing other streams of revenue that aren't as costly to consumers. They have less cost products that are being sold across the world. So hopefully those revenues can grow in huge volumes and actually boost up company sales. So what Apple's expected to do is post earnings per share estimate around $2.07. And a revenue estimate of $52.45 billion. If we take a look, Apple's actually done a beautiful job over the last 4 quarters of actually beating analyst expectations. So the darker chart is actually showing what analysts were expecting, and the light blue shows the actual results. So you can see here over the past 4 individual quarters, Apple has actually beat analyst expectations for earnings per share in each of the last 4 quarters. So it'll be great to see if they can continue that trend and post positive earnings per share and actually post a positive surprise this coming quarter, which comes out tomorrow. So if we take a look at the same quarter for the previous year, see the quarter ending June 2019, Apple posted revenue of $53.8 billion. This quarter's expectations are at $52.45 billion, which actually shows analysts are expecting the revenue to decline for the same quarter this year as last year. With regard to earnings per share compared to the same quarter in the previous year, June 2019, earnings per share were $2.20. Meanwhile, analysts are expecting earnings per share of $2.07. So once again, they're expecting a decline in earnings per share this year. Another thing to keep in mind is some analysts believe that even if Apple's stock shows strong earnings, that they believe that this big rally that we've seen over the past couple months, that it may not see a lot of upside. Though that might be priced in. Those strong positive results and that strong news may already be priced into Apple's stock right now. Of course, no one knows for sure. We'll have to see when the results come out, how the stock moves. But I really want to throw that into because I thought it was an interesting report from JP Morgan. The second stock we have to take a look at is Amazon. So of course, with the world we're living in, with retail stores being shut down and a lot of people transitioning to the digital world, Amazon is expected to see huge revenue growth. This company is going to see huge growth over the long term only because they are the market leader in e-commerce. And this is the type of world that actually thrives in an e-commerce sector. So currently trading at around $3,000 a share. 1 year chart, they're up 57%. If we take a look at what analysts are expecting, this quarter they're expecting $1.62 earnings and a revenue estimate of over $81 billion. Amazon has not been the great job of actually beating expectations. Analysts have had high expectations for Amazon over the past year. You can see here they actually beat expectations only once over the past 4 quarters. Taking a look at the same quarter last year, you can see here June 2019, total revenues were $63.4 billion. Meanwhile, expectations for the quarter that we're going to find out tomorrow have revenues expected to be around $81 billion. So huge growth in revenue year over year is to be expected. But even though we see a huge growth in revenue expectations, last year's earnings per share for the same quarter was at $5.32. Meanwhile, they're only expected to post earnings of $1.62 a share this quarter. So huge growth in revenue, but also with a huge decline in earnings per share expectations. So Amazon will be an interesting play because this company is actually expected to see huge growth. All these other companies are actually expected to have a little bit of a slight decline in revenue. Meanwhile, Amazon expected to have huge growth in revenue. So Amazon will be a very interesting stock to, of course, have your eye on tomorrow. Third big tech stock we got to go through, Facebook. Of course, it's in the news a lot lately. A lot of big companies are removing their ads from Facebook, postponing paying Facebook for advertisements until the company decides to make some changes. So it'll be interesting to see how this big news actually affects the company. Of course, with this transition, like I said, maybe it doesn't affect Facebook at all because big businesses are pulling away money. Maybe there's a bunch of small businesses who are actually transitioning to Facebook because they have to shut down their retail location. That may actually bolster up sales and replace those big name companies that actually pulled out of Facebook. So currently trading at around $230 a share. 1 year chart up around 16%, so not those 52% gains, 80% gains like we saw on Amazon and Apple, but still nice 1 year chart up 16%. If we take a look at what analysts are expecting, they're expecting an earnings per share of $1.38 and revenue at $17.36 billion. Facebook once again has done a pretty good job of beating analyst expectations. They've beat 3 of the last 4 quarters, and the one quarter that they did miss was only by 1 cent. And they, of course, beat by 1 cent in the next following quarter. So overall, they've done a nice job of beating analyst expectations. Moving over to how this compares to last year's for the same quarter, you can see here that June 2019, they posted revenue of $16.8 billion. Meanwhile, this year, they're expected to post revenue for the same quarter at $17.36 billion. So a slight growth in revenue this quarter, which of course shows some positivity that even though there might be an economic shutdown, Facebook will continue to thrive even with big name businesses pulling their ads, that they actually might see a growth in revenue. Meanwhile, with regard to earnings for this same quarter, you can see here last year they posted basic earnings per share numbers at 92 cents per share. And this year they're expected to post earnings per share of $1.38. So a slight growth in revenue, but a huge expectation to grow earnings per share. $1.38 expectations for this quarter. Meanwhile, they posted 92 cent per share earnings per share last quarter for the same year. So it'll be very interesting to see how Facebook performs and if they can beat these high expectations for not only revenue, but also earnings per share growth. The final big tech stock that reports tomorrow that we have to take a look at is Google, currently around $1,500 a share, up 22% on the 1 year chart, fully recovered from the pandemic lows and trading very near that all-time high, worth a market cap at over $1 trillion. So Google is expected to post earnings per share numbers at around 8.25 and revenue expectation around $37.3 billion. If we take a look, Google has done an okay job with regard to analyst expectations. Over the last 4 quarters, they've beaten twice and missed twice. So interesting numbers there. Let's take a look at how these expectations compared to last year's Q2. If we take a look, quarter ending June 2019, they saw total revenues of $38.9 billion. And in this quarter, they're expected to post revenues of $37.3 billion. So they're actually expected to show a decline in revenue in this quarter this year compared to the same quarter last year, which is very interesting because you would think that during this time, a lot of people would be using Google more because they're spending more time at home. People might be ramping up their products on Google and their services used with Google, but they're actually expected to post a decline in revenue from the same quarter year over year. With regard to net income, last year in this quarter, they posted basic net income per share of $14.33. Meanwhile, they're only expected to post earnings per share numbers of $8.25. So again, they're showing a big decline in earnings per share numbers from the same quarter last year compared to this year. So interesting expectations for Google. Overall, this week will show huge results for the stock market, and I believe this week will continue to be very volatile. It'll be interesting to see how these big four tech companies impact the overall market, and if they do beat on expectations or if they miss expectations, how they'll actually have a sway on the overall stock price, not only for the company, but the overall S&P or the NASDAQ. So those are my reviews, and those are the expectations of how these big tech companies are going to perform this week. Tomorrow is going to be a very busy day in the market. Look out for these big headlines and take a look at how these companies perform. And of course, take a look at their quarterly results, see how they performed during a time of economic shutdown. A lot of people hold these as core holdings within their portfolio, and they believe they have strong futures. So it'll be interesting to see if these companies can continue to perform in a strong manner during a time of economic slowdown and a time of economic shutdown. So of course, that's how we're going to wrap up this video today. I'm the Gen Z Investor, and I post videos on this channel every single day. So stay tuned, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.